This is the Lydian Spin with Lydia Lunch and Tim Dahl, episode number 231. Good afternoon, Timothy.
Good afternoon. A little activity outside my house this afternoon.
Mine
Helicopters.
too. What's going on? What's going on outside your house?
Well, we have helicopters, a lot of sirens. Usually when they bring the helicopters out, there's like some violence went down or a gun or something like that. But when they're circling around, they don't bring that choppers out for no reason in the residential area. So
I've got an endless buzzsaw going because finally the restaurant on the corner that caught fire about 6 months ago is being refurbished, I guess. But it's kind of a beehive of noise, but so be it. Get into noise in a bit later.
Well, beehive of noise, and I've always told you that, and it was never made in that Stockhausen. I think it was a Wire interview. He was dreaming of writing a violin concerto with a swarm of bees, which I thought was pretty imaginative. I don't know how you'd do it, but
I always thought you would look even more handsome with a beard of bees.
Me? I thought you hate beards. Right? You don't.
I do, but if they're made of bees, I might favor them for a minute.
No one. I mean, you don't like. I mean, some women really hate kissing guys with beards, but like a beard of bees, that's a real hard sale.
Well, who said I was going to kiss you just because you're wearing a beard of bees?
Right. But you would let me in your
You're
house.
taking that a bit too far, Timothy. It must be the end of the week.
Yeah, you'd let me in your house with a beard of bees? I mean, how would you want to be around me with a beard of bees?
So I could see myself with a beard of ladybugs. And at one time, a couple of months ago, I had 5 ladybugs in my house at once. And I even woke up with one kissing my wrist.
Now, why are they called ladybugs? I never even looked that up.
Because they're so freaking cute. I don't know.
Are the males also the red with black polka dots, or just
they're called something else in the UK? But right off the top of my head, I can't think of what they're called. something else. But ladybugs are wonderful. First of all, they eat really tiny bugs. They're good for plants. They're adorable.
Yeah, on the Leonard Lopate show today, they were talking about some florist who selling Christmas trees and blah blah blah, but he also is an expert in like gardens, and he was basically he was saying that like all these like chemical pesticides, like he's at this point he's like, let nature sort it out, even with invasive species, because you end up killing all the good shit as well.
Get the ladybugs, or you know what? Look, I mean, it's simple. As an herbologist to some degree, a lot of bugs don't like cinnamon. You put those on your plants, and they're going to get rid of the bugs. They just don't like it.
They don't like it.
Anyway, this is a cheerful piece of news for me because I just love this kind of stuff. Now that I have faith in the youth of today or any day, but
sure.
18 children from California are suing the Environmental Protection Agency for violating their constitutional rights and for playing an intentional role in exasperating climate change and burdening youth with a lifetime of hardship. Hello, kids. Yes,
they're correct. Although their parents probably put them up to it, but they are correct, and they should do that. Especially since the EPA is just a revolving door with anti-EPA corporate CEOs. It's so insane.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, right now, of course, the California extreme heat wave, the weather is affecting kids' education, like the wild forest, all the fires which now are burning again. It's more than 1,900 California schools closed down in 2018 to 2019 due to the wildfires. So breeding a lot of little Greta Thunbergs, which I think is very good, especially when this past week, the fraud that was the climate summit. I mean, speak about duplicity and hypocrisy right in front of your very nose when you have the head of a huge oil corporation being the head of the climate summit.
Yeah, well, it's also the thing about EPA, which I'm for, theoretically, but these are such gutted institutions from all the blood money that comes into Washington.
Absolutely.
I was reading the other day some of these. So our produce, for instance, everywhere, it's covered with these
13,000 fruits, vegetables, and foods are contaminated.
Well, we coat them. Even Whole Foods, all of them do this. You coat them with these Trader Joe's. They all do it. These like little microplastic, like a mask almost.
This is what I really don't get. Even organic stores have fucking plastic containers for food.
Well, the thing about the word organic is that forget that.
Doesn't
but is there a spray just so you can get any type of produce from all around the world, that shit would rot normally. So that's why I can sit in these fucking stores, and it's just there's a thin mask on everything.
Well, you know what? It's time to just live on bee pollen.
Well, the thing is,
because there's not going to be many bees left anyway. So
one of these plastics that's in that little mask, it's been brought to the EPA. Well, it's proven to be like carcinogenic and all this shit. And that was brought to the table like 40 years ago. And I think 2024 March is when they're finally going to see and make a decision. It's like, well, at 40 years,
all right,
people already got the fucking cancer. I mean, what are you talking about?
You want to know of a horrifying statistic? Every person in the United States lives within 3 miles, 70%, because the others live in, glass houses. 70% of all Americans live within 3 miles of a toxic waste zone, 1,900 by their count. So, there's more. Superfund sites, 39,000 hazardous waste sites, most of them because of the Department of Defense, biggest polluters in America. We're not even going into past history about the Manhattan Project. Let's talk about the here and now. So for nearly 20 years, Texas, we know they're not environmental regulators of any kind,
right?
Have known, if not for longer, that a small unincorporated community east of Houston, very close, has, dangerous levels of benzene, which is linked to leukemia and other blood cancers. And of course, who lives in these toxic zones are mostly poor people and minorities. Yep. So not only for 20 years, probably 40 have they known, but they're legally allowed to release 20 times more volatile organic compounds that include benzene into the air each year than it did 20 fucking years ago. Thank you, Texas. I mean, if they don't care about women's health and they say you can't have an abortion even though you are going to die and your baby's dead, what do they give a shit about kids anyway?
Well, there's all that. I mean, Texas is only good at regulating one thing, and that's keeping the population in check to go to prison. They regulate people in order to fucking feed their prison fucking complex. Environment, education. I mean, I actually like Texas. Don't get me wrong. I really have a great time when I'm there. But geez, I mean, come on.
They have allowed the long-term guidance for benzene.
Yeah,
a 40% increase from the time it was known that they are basically giving leukemia and blood cancer to their population. Because again, they don't fucking care. And the thing with all of these and these climate deniers is because they think they're all going to heaven. So what the fuck does it matter what happens in 20 more years? And they're all in their 70s, 80s, and 90s anyway. This is the problem. That's why I hand it to the children. Thank you very much. As if there's any hope for them to be suing the EPA.
So the allergies, kind of tying what I was saying earlier with this, first of all, Christmas trees are twice as much as they were just 3 years ago because there's a shortage, I guess. Well,
that's why people should buy rosemary bushes, which they will, proliferate, and you can cook with them and they'll expand.
Well, just like, they coat those things with all types of just preservative things. So you're basically bringing in this toxic tree, and people's allergies are going through the roof right now. They're getting rashes. It's actually really bad. And of course, then people get these fake trees, and by the way, those fake trees, sky's the limit. You can get a very realistic one that's like, but it costs like over $1,000 fucking bucks.
Well, how about just decorating a fucking pine cone?
All that shit. I mean, the thing about the fake trees is people don't dust them, so there's just a lot of people having bad reactions by having these fake trees in their house.
I love the smell of a pine tree,
of course,
in its natural habitat.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing's absurd. As if this is a Christian celebration. I mean, as if Jesus was born on this day. Give me a fucking break. Oh, as if a pine tree in your house is related to Rome, Italy, in any fucking way. Give me a fucking break. All right,
exactly.
Well, one of our people we've worked with and place we performed in, they're in the news again. The Satanic Temple. Especially now that that the Republicans are all doing these town meetings in Iowa to get ready for the caucuses, and so
now that they have totally erased the separation between church and motherfucking
that's up. And so of course the Satanic Temple exploits this, and they did a holiday shrine at the state capital, and of course everyone's going nuts, even though they're all about they claim they're all about religious freedom and all that, except for when they don't agree with whatever religion that is. And of course, and it went to the Supreme Court, and even DeSantis was on there the other day. Someone was freaking out that it was there, and he was trying to avoid it because he actually does believe he doesn't want to tell them that people actually have the right to do it, because he's also not even religious. He's a cynical fucking shit. But he also said, "Oh, I don't think it's a real religion. That's not what the founding fathers would want, or whatever." Anyhow, there's a shrine. The Satanic Temple has done their own little Christmas decoration next to all the other things, and there's this woman who's like a real nutcase, Shelley Lockhart. She's like going and doing prayers around the table. This is evil, but she seems more obsessed with it than anyone else. She actually gravitates towards this thing.
If Catholics, don't realize how evil their so-called God was, they have no idea that Satan was actually the savior who did no harm, in my opinion. Now, speaking about real evil, and those unstable geniuses which populate the American political and non-political corporate landscape, Tesla is recalling more than 2 million vehicles to fix systems that monitor drivers using autopilot. Now, first of all, I'm all for electric cars. Unfortunately, in America, there's very few charging stations. Recently in Europe on tour, we were using electric cars, whatever, slightly inconvenient.
Tesla's got more than Tesla's got a better infrastructure for that than the others, but I'm not trying to sell Tesla.
Yeah, but not in this country, because it's still very hard to get to charge a thing. But anyway, basically these are being recalled because people who want to, be watching videos, making TikTok videos and be on their phone while driving. Well, in San Francisco, they just had massive crashes from these autopilot things. And the thing is, autopilot, get off your fucking cell phones.
Well, first of all, it's America. So you're going to have a certain demographic, a certain percentage. I mean, people are seeing all the time, someone feet dangling out of the window, seat completely reclined, going 95 miles an hour, and they're on their phone, like really, like, hey, let's take this thing to a limit. Now, of course, that person's such an idiot, they don't realize they could die from that. But we saw it last summer when me, you, and Matt Nelson were in San Francisco, and San Francisco is San Francisco is so fucking insane right now. You have it's ground zero for for tech, and it's the heart of darkness, or the heart of whatever you want to say. And they've definitely, that city has allowed all this allowed the infrastructure of that city to be a testing ground for all these self-driving cars. Of course, they're getting into accidents everywhere, which I saw in my own two eyes. Are constantly, police are going there to deal with a 3-car. And then the backdrop, it's like a post-apocalyptic movie. Oil drums on fire, crazy homeless people like fighting, and like needles in your arms, like no exaggeration. So you have some of the wealthiest people in the world right now using this city as a testing ground, testing the latest technology. And then you have the fucking most insane street homeless culture you can possibly imagine right there.
Because the divide has widened. And by the way,
so nuts.
Silicon Valley is one of the most polluted places because of all the tech debris. So they're living, like the Google factory there is just toxic waste dump. And you know what? I hope I'm going to keep my thoughts to myself.
Well, going back, there was one secretary for transportation in America. He was talking about this because he's about, he had warned America about Tesla and the potential dangers, and was seeing some of the results and the self-driving, and he had the channels because he was working high up. I forget his name, but he called Elon Musk about 5 years ago, and saying, you might want to work on this. And before he could even get the first sentence in, Elon Musk hung up on him. And it's just, you can't. Fine, this guy's getting all the tax breaks in the world to do all his brilliant little ideas, and realize
people pollute on a grand scale and be a fucking idiot. Anyway, speaking about idiocy, scientists say, quote unquote, I've never seen anything like this. Japan says reason behind 1,200 tons of fish washing ashore is unknown. Give me a frickin' break.
Fukushima?
They're struggling to determine why hundreds of tons of fish have washed ashore in recent days. Now, could it possibly be releasing all the water from Fukushima into the waterways? That's a lot of fish. This is basically a sea of dead fish. The cause is unknown at the moment. Well, how about another frickin' lie? Give me a reason that
they don't want to. They don't want to point fingers. Japanese politics are always.
They've been washing ashore for 4 months after the plant began discharging.
Well, that country is one of the per capita, maybe the biggest seafood consumers on the planet per capita,
and most duplicitous in just about anything, because they really don't like to. That first of all, no word for no. They just want to bow and say yes to everything, and well, yes to killing all the fish.
Well, all that stuff, but also, I mean, to generalize it, there is a historic. It's part of the historically part of the culture is the whole idea of controlling nature. Now, I guess you could say that everywhere at this fucking point, but this is like it's actually something a sense of there's pride associated with that kind of cultural thing. But controlling nature is something that just mankind's trying to do in order, but it's the motivation is so we're not wiped out. It's not like as we give a shit about nature. It's like, oh, maybe we need to keep these few things alive for us. Let's see here. I got this. Oh yeah, I didn't get to touch this last week, but this is it's still an ongoing investigation. Jacqueline Elmquist, 24. So she was there's video of her. She was walking around Chelsea, like wasted, coming out of some holiday party and just like stumbling, goes into some somewhat fancy apartment building. I don't know if she got in, but she was in the lobby on West 28th and
in Chelsea, New York.
In Chelsea, New York. Squeezed down the garbage chute. They don't even know why. They don't know, or I mean, into an incinerator and died. Just that was it. And of course, the investigation is saying, well, she's just blackout. Maybe she was on psych meds and mixed it or whatever. She was just totally blackout. And why she did this, they don't know. Of course, some people are like, was there foul play? Is this like a weird serial killing? Because 5 years ago, the exact same thing happened to this woman, Laura Pridoris or something, in Manhattan, decided to go down, but she dropped dozens of fucking flights down the garbage chute. And at first people were like, well, how did this person get in this thing? But these are kind of like little skinny little critter ladies, and they did, but so the question is,
can't handle their alcohol, fell into the garbage chute.
Well, not fell. I mean, you literally have to go head first and squeeze your body down.
Maybe she lost her cell phone and was looking for it.
Well, hey, you should be the fucking detective on this one. I mean,
well, you know what? I wouldn't bother investigating a drunk gal who fell down a garbage chute.
Oh, fine, but the question is this some kind of collective consciousness thing of drunk women at night in Manhattan, or is there a creepy fetishized serial killer dude that's into dumping women down garbage chutes? I don't know, but this is happening.
I don't know, but this is to me more even horrifying than that.
Please.
In the world's first known case, a man tears his windpipe from holding a sneeze.
Oh no!
So this is the first known case of its kind. And he was driving his car and experiencing about a hay fever, maybe from a Christmas tree. And he suddenly felt the overwhelming urge to sneeze. But instead of sneezing, he stifled it by pinching his nose and closing his mouth. So during a sneeze, the mouth and nose are both closed. The pressure generated in the upper airways can exceed more than 20 times. That's which normally builds up, right? If you're holding it. So the pressure was so great that he blew a hole in his windpipe. He arrived, I'm choking just from thinking at it. He arrived at the emergency department in severe pain, obviously. Neck was swollen on both sides. He struggled to move his neck. And when doctors examined it, they could also hear a faint crackling sound.
Oh, no.
However, he didn't have problems breathing. So they x-rayed him and he said, blew a hole in his windpipe.
I mean,
rapid buildup of pressure in the trachea while sneezing with a pinched nose and closed mouth.
How uptight is this guy?
Sneezing is one of the most violent things the body can do on its own accord.
But why was he was he so uptight with his manners that he's like, oh, I'm in company, I guess I'm gonna.
Well, he was British.
Just hold it in.
Anyway,
I mean, why would he do that?
Terrifying. Well,
cover your mouth, but
do
let it
not
out.
Stifle a sneeze.
No.
By pinching your nose.
Do you think anyone's ruptured their rectum by holding in a fart?
Well, I'll get back to you on that one.
All right.
I will investigate. I don't know. Does it, if you hold it, I mean, first of all,
I think sneezing's a little more, it's a more
it's
brutal
a bit more
force.
violent.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
maybe if they
definitely.
had like the largest butt, I'm not even going to go
Wait, we
there.
don't know. We don't know. Anyhow, I think that's it for my stories.
It boggles the mind. Well, and speaking of boggling the mind,
Please.
our next guest, the amount of his maniacally magnificent compositions, his releases, and his artworks, his compositional genius, paralleled by none, in my opinion, is our guest, which I'm very happy to welcome again for the second time, which is J.G. Thirlwell. Here again on the Lydian Spin. This is Lydia Lunch, Tim Dahl, and coming at you, J.G. Thirlwell. This is the Lydian Spin with Lydia Lunch, Tim Dahl, and master composer, incredible graphic artist, man of many hats, and a musical schizophrenic of the highest order, J.G. Thirlwell. Hello.
Hi.
Good to see you, Jim.
Hi. See you.
Saw you a couple weeks ago, and then I saw that you, not to digress from what you want to talk about today, but I saw that you sat in with Dinosaurs Jr. just the other night.
That's right.
How was that? What, DJ said or what?
No. I sang a couple of songs with him. I sang 2 Stooges songs with him. It was the event was it was for the 30th anniversary of their album Where You Been. They did 7-night stint at Music Hall of Williamsburg and invited people to sit in with them every night. And so they invited me first of all to do whatever I wanted. And
so what'd you throw down?
Well, I suggested a dinosaur song, but they didn't do that song anymore. So Jay suggested that we do a couple of Stooges songs. We did No Fun and TVI. But Jay had tried to rope me in on a Stooges project before, quite a few years ago, at Poisson Rouge, and I think he was doing a show with Ron Ashton and and Mike Watt, and they were doing a whole lot of Stooges songs, and I was just too sort of intimidated and starstruck by the
come on.
Oh, hang on.
idea of singing with Ron Ashton and being a Stooge. So I passed on that, but in the meantime, I did a track with James Williamson, and I guess that sort of softened things up, So.
Well, I mean, that's one of the things I wanted to ask you is, you do so many different kinds of music. It's always changing. You have a few different kinds of themes or personas. Do you ever miss the hard rock and Foetus, or was it fun to do that the other night with the Dinosaur Juniors?
The thing is that's kind of in my DNA, and
Right.
and I have an ensemble which I just do under the name J.G. Thirlwell and Plus Ensemble, which I premiered actually at the Kitchen, which was a tribute to you, Lydia.
What?
What year was that?
I don't know what year was that. It was before the pandemic. It was probably 2018 or 17.
Okay.
Encore.
You and Dan Golden. And so then I 3 songs that night, and then I expanded that into a full set, which is chamber versions of songs from my repertoire, from my past and from my present. And they're
I'll meet you in Poland, baby.
Yes, exactly. Well, they're rearranged for harp, piano, violin / viola, and acoustic guitar and drums on some of the songs. So I just did that in London for the first time with my Manorexia musicians there, and that's a really great opportunity to do radically different reinterpretations of that material and just let the songs really breathe without the delivering them with punishing volume. And I can't do things with loud volume anymore because my ears are so sharp, and I just don't want to. Plus, I really
tinnitus.
I have terrible tinnitus. Yeah.
Oh.
I have it in one ear, the ear that was closest to Weasel.
Well, guitars and cymbals, those are the ones that are.
Yeah, I in fact, just that 7 minutes on stage with dinosaur exacerbated my tinnitus quite badly.
Oh,
And,
So
terrible.
they still have a pretty loud. They're always known for a loud stage volume. They still do, I guess.
oh, insane. I mean, it's just insane. I mean,
But
like
it's
during the
interesting what you were. You
during the
go
sound
ahead.
check, they're all wearing head muffs, like the like
Helmets.
which,
Well, I mean, when you talk about, so you're making these new arrangements, these chamber arrangements of your repertoire. Do you choose the instrumentation thinking timbrely, or do you pick just musicians you want to work with in this situation?
no, it's all about the instruments, and that's I don't know how I came up with that instrumentation. To start with, it was just what popped into my head that I wanted to hear that combination of instruments playing that material because I think it's actually really inconvenient to have a harp in your band.
Oh yes, oh yes. Those things,
But,
moving those things around, it's not so easy.
but
Find it
but
very inconvenient to have a guitar player in my band half the time, but that's just me.
yeah, but at least you can check that you can put the guitar player in the overhead compartment.
Well, and I mean, technically, you would think having a drummer would be inconvenient, but most venues have drums.
Well, I just want to touch on
Venues
something
don't have harps; they just don't.
No, nobody has a harp. I wanted to touch on something that you said before, JJ, where you said, when you're reimagining things that were very hard or throbbing or aggressive in the past, and then reimagining them to different instruments. And it's kind of the Retrovirus was kind of the opposite of that, like taking some songs that were very kind of certainly not mellow, but quieter, like some of the Queen of Siam stuff, and then bringing a new ferocity to them.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what I was doing with the touring version of Foetus in the 80s and 90s, and I didn't want to do that anymore because I felt like it gained a certain amount of power and a different interpretation of the material, but it also steamrolled out some of the nuance and subtlety of the musicality. And when I finally started working with large ensembles, then I felt like I was realizing my music in the way that it was meant to be heard. But it's, it takes a lot of different instrumentation to do that. And the first time I really felt like I was feeling properly represented, it was an 18-piece ensemble. And
I saw that, and that was one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. It was just so fantastic. It was really amazing. I don't remember where it was in New York. I saw it, but I don't remember where. But it was so just superb.
Where was it?
Was it when you were living in LA?
It might have been. It was just, I mean, I don't remember the place because it took me to another dimension.
Yeah, yeah. It's also kind of expensive to do that.
Very expensive, yes.
So I don't do that often. But I usually have a few different iterations of my, performance thing going at the same time in different combinations of people.
Well, and also you just got back from Australia. I mean, for various reasons you had to go there, but you also did some performances there. And were those solo shows? And which one of your permutations was that you were presenting to the Australians?
That was Silver Mantis, which is a solo performance vehicle where I use electronics, but also prepared piano. And so I need a grand piano to do that. Well, I've actually done it with stand-up piano as well. Prepared piano, theremin, and electronics and visuals. And I do it in 4 channels. So it's quadraphonic, and I have 2 speakers in the rear of the performance space. So the sound can bounce around, and it's very immersive.
Are you assigning each instrument to a channel that's panned in the same spot the whole time? Or are you actually moving it around as it goes?
No, the electronics, I have it programmed in such a way where I can hit certain keys, and the keys will be assigned to different sounds, and some of the sounds are in the front and some of them are in the back. So it doesn't pan, but it's spatialized as I go. But the way that I perform it and the way that I play it changes every time. So there's many different combinations of things that I could do. And so it's an elastic performance where I can respond to what's going on, respond to the room, respond to the way that I feel, and shrink sections and expand sections. And then with the prepared piano, usually I put sort of put it in the front, then in the rear, I might have like a slight delay on it, or I might have a reverb signal of that. The same with the theremin.
To create a three-dimensional
Yeah.
effect. Cool. So what's coming up for you right now? What are you preparing for, performance-wise and just composition and production-wise?
Well, today I'm working on a woodwind quintet for
Of course you are.
Yeah.
Of course you are.
It's for a performance in Orlando next month.
Oh, cool.
I'm writing it's a full evenings of material for the Alterity Chamber Orchestra, which is an ensemble in Orlando.
That
And
in conjunction with the Temecula
yeah,
place.
Temecula Arts
Temecula, yeah.
Foundation. So for that, I've written they're an 16 piece, I think, chamber orchestra, and I've written one large ensemble piece for them. I'm writing this new woodwind quintet, which is something I haven't done before, but that's turning out pretty good, which is about 12 minutes long so far. And then I've revoiced the piece that I originally wrote for the String Orchestra of Brooklyn for this different instrumentation. So that piece is about 15 or 16 minutes long. And we're going to start the set with one of Manorexia's hits, Armadillo Stance, but I rearranged the string quartet.
Did somebody say armadillo?
Yeah.
No comment.
So cool. So I mean, when your music is being realized with these different ensembles around the world, how early do you get there? I mean, do you let other people take it? I don't know if there's a conductor sometimes, or if you're conducting, but how involved are you in the rehearsal process? Or are you kind of just showing up and seeing how they do it?
No, this time there's 4 rehearsals. I'm coming in for the last rehearsal.
Yeah.
It depends on the piece. I mean, I worked on a large scale piece for Alarm Will Sound, which premiered the start of this year in January, at Mizzou College in Missouri. And
oh yes, I remember this.
And for that
wait
piece,
a second. Wait a second. Missouri. That's very interesting. Never stepped foot there. One has a very vivid imagination of what goes on in Missouri.
You have. We played St. Louis together.
Don't remind me. Missouri. Did you go there?
Yeah, I went there, but before that, we went through a kind of an extensive workshopping of that piece, and I wrote it before the pandemic, but then we were workshopping it during the pandemic, and we had to workshop it in Zoom. So they had half of the ensemble in one studio and half in another studio, but we did it on different days. So one day I was listening to half of the ensemble, and the following day I had to listen to the other half, and then kind of imagine what was going on between them.
What's interesting about that procedure is it's kind of like back to your origins when you were cutting up disparate pieces of tape, and then the final result would be mysterious or not. I mean, it's kind of like that. It's kind of like dividing the tracks in half and then just assuming the way they're going to fit together. Kind of mysterious.
Yeah, that was difficult. I mean, it was difficult in the best of times for ensembles in the pandemic. But yeah, normally I do attend rehearsals, but not necessarily every rehearsal. And sometimes there's a lot of rehearsals, sometimes there's not. I mean, with the string quartet, I released a string quartet album this year, and we did a show for that.
What's that called, Jen? What's that called, JG?
That is called, what is that called? Geez, I can't remember what that
well, who plays on that, or is it?
It's called Dystonia, and it's played Mevo's quartet play on that. And that, yeah, I attended all the rehearsals for that, and that's a very that was really important to attend every rehearsal of that. But there's a lot that can happen between between what's on the page and what comes out on the stage.
Do ensembles approach you and commission you to write a piece for them, or they want to play one of your pieces, or do you get a commission, or you just like dig into your own pockets and say, I want to do this, and this is the group I want to do it with, or all the above?
I'm usually commissioned.
Yep.
But with the string quartet album, first I got a grant to do it, and then I put then I decided who was playing on it. Actually, I think I had I might have approached Mivos. It was up between Mivos and Jack Quartet. But Jack was sort of out of my league.
What does that mean? Out of your league? I got
way too busy, and there was a lot more interest in Mivos.
Sure.
You said that you just returned from Australia, and you said that you were composing some material there because you were kind of stranded there for a while. What were you composing on? What did you bring down there? What equipment did you have in your carry-on?
It was very little. I just had I spent quite a lot of time beforehand equipping my laptop in such a way where I could have something comparable to my recording studio on my laptop. So what was really important was getting all the software onto my laptop and clearing enough space, but also having I brought a lot of hard drives with my instrument libraries on it. And so I was actually I scored 2 episodes of Archer while I was down there, and worked on the major piece for the Alterity ensemble. But while I was down there, I also made a lot of recordings for prepared piano with Kat Hope, who's a composer down there that has a new music ensemble called Decibel New Music Ensemble, and did a bunch of sessions at the Melbourne Electronic Sound Studio as well, which
cool.
What does that mean? You did sessions. What does that mean exactly?
Well, the Melbourne Electronic Sound Studio has probably maybe an array of 80 synthesizers, so I had my wish list of synthesizers that I want to work with, and I formed a framework for a Zordox piece, which is Zordox is another one of my projects. It's all electronic, and then worked my way through all of these synthesizers that were down there making overdubs on.
Can you name some of these synthesizers? Like, and were any of them ones you had never played before, but you wanted to?
There were ones that I'd seen listed on records that I'd owned in the 70s, like the ARP 2600.
Sure.
The Putney EMS, which famously played with Roxy Music. And then I worked on a bunch of other, like the Waldorf, which I really liked, more modern one, and various others. And the EMS, which was kind of a dream synth to work with, but I just didn't have enough time on it. And a lot of those synths are not
user friendly. I mean, or just
the patching and so on. It's not necessarily intuitive to me. It's not enough time to spend 3 hours farting around on it. You need you need to get a lot deeper into those instruments.
Yep.
But I did get some really good sounds, which I'll be cutting up and reorganizing. So I think that there's one long piece on the next Zordox album, which will consist exclusively of stuff that I came up with there.
So with Archer, I mean, what percentage is synth pre setup tracks that maybe you made, and what percentage are ensemble, maybe even union guys? I don't know who's brought in to make those recordings, or is it all from the studio from you?
No union guys. You're not allowed to union guys. This is Disney.
Oh, okay. All right, whatever. But they're bringing in actual, like horn players and all that stuff. It's not
I brought in, I the last 1 or 2 seasons, I don't think I think the last season I didn't bring any outside musicians, but I did, I think, 8 seasons on Archer. I came in on season 7, and I brought in didn't bring in more than one musician at any one time, but
Because you can do it all, JJ. You can do it all.
I can't do what these guys did. So I brought in, Marty Ehrlich, who played sax and flute, and Steve Bernstein played some trumpet, and
Sure.
Simon Haynes played some guitar and keys, and who else did I bring in? Oh, Matt Nelson played some
Oh
sax.
yes.
And,
Multi-readist.
yeah, and Peter Evans played.
Oh, yes.
So you got more trumpet players.
Yeah, Peter Evans played on something.
Gotta call in the family sometimes. That's
Well,
Yeah.
if they can do it, why not keep it close and comfortable?
Yeah. So I brought in a lot of people, but what I tend to do is when I bring in a musician, I'll write a theme or several themes and have them play the top line melody in several different ways, and then improvise around it. And then I end up with a lot of material that I can then cull from and then redo. And then sometimes I'll take a phrase and then orchestrate the phrase. So I can take a little piece of improv and then.
what was the deadline on each episode? Like, how long did you have to compose for each episode?
I usually worked a little bit ahead of time, but I usually did from start to finish. It would take me about 3 weeks. That's not working every day. That's working at a pretty good pace. And I got pretty close to the mix time on that. When we just did the Venture Brothers movie, and the Venture Brothers movie, I got right up. I mean, they were kind of calling, screaming out to me for the final cues on that, because it was really work intensive, and TV in general is.
Yes, it is. We had Cliff Martinez on this podcast some years ago, and he was just talking about when he first started doing film score, which I think was Pee-wee's Playhouse. Just getting that work process going was very slow and a little intimidating at first. How long did it take for you to be able to just get a routine that you feel comfortable just kind of diving into any situation?
Well, also because it seems like you have to put so much of yourself into it, but then appease the people that want it. So how much do you have to pull back? How far do you go with, and how draining is it?
That's well, those are two different questions. For the first question on how long it took me to feel comfortable with it, the first season of Venture Brothers was really hard. It took me 6 months to do this, maybe more than 6 months to do this. Actually, I did say maybe it took me about a year to do that season, and I was overwriting, and it was so much work, and I wanted to put a bullet in my head, and it was so hard. But at the same time, I was finding my feet, and I was finding out what worked and what didn't work, and refining my process. But it didn't take until, it took maybe up until season 4 that I really started to feel comfortable with it. And that season 4 was when I hit the famous Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours, where I had done so much of it that all of a sudden it was easier and I was better at it.
Yep. Cool.
And then I started to, find my feet with it. And then I had to just sort of but I had to, you have to sort of, you don't want to dial it in. I always strive for excellence on what I do, but also it's different to being just a composer in my own right, because you're part of a team and you're at the service of the show. So you have to elevate the material and make it better. I can't help but bring my personality to it. I do.
Well, that's why they wanted you to do it.
Yeah. And then sometimes, but after I've done it, it's not really a forum where you experiment, because I've done things where I've experimented with things and I've tried different things, and then they don't get used, and you've put days and days into something.
Yeah.
So I tended to just sort of keep to what I thought was the the musical universe of each project, and then that can expand. The way that I started working on Archer was I wanted to create a different universe to Venture Brothers, and it was more noir and it was more jazz driven. But then that universe started to expand because the show started to expand, and they had these dream seasons where Archer was in a coma and he went into outer space and stuff like that. So there was a lot.
That must have been fun.
It was a lot of fun. And then so I got to, you know, stretch out my John Williams muscle, and I got to do a lot more electronic music, and then there slowly became a bit more electronic music in Archer. So yeah, each world was expanded, and then Venture Brothers was so schizophrenic from episode to episode. One episode might be in Greece, and then there was an episode where one of the villains was kind of a takeoff on Andy Warhol, and there was a band that was kind of like the Velvet Underground. So I found myself writing like 3 Velvet Underground type songs, and there was another episode where they talk about prog rock, and I was writing these like songs. And
well, speaking of prog rock, wasn't there, or correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't there a big band arrangement of the Venture Brothers theme that Terry Bozzio played on, or am I so Terry Bozzio was pretty well, he played with Zappa, so he's pretty progged out. Were you at that performance?
But I was there. That was a really weird day, because I was going to that performance that night, and I was walking back about 100 yards from the loft in Dumbo, and I walked through the middle of these 3 kids because I was in a hurry, and it was like about 5 at night. Then those kids, they jumped me and started beating me up, and I was on the ground, and I was getting pounded in the head, and it was like some kind of a dare or something like that. And I was like, yo, motherfucker, I live here. And then, you know, so I was getting pounded in the head by these kids. And then the cops came and they drove me around the projects. And I saw one of the kids and pointed him out. Then I had to go to the fucking concert. And so Terry had contacted me, and he was a big fan of Venture Brothers. And so I think he did the arrangements, and they did the theme from the Venture Brothers, and I think they also did the song Tough, which is the closing credits music of Venture Brothers. But it was amazing to, you know, the big band was amazing.
So he made the big band arrangements, and and of course Terry Bozzio had his 98-piece drum set with him, or
it was a big drum set. There was also on the set there was a bunch of different drummers, and there was the guy from the Chili Peppers, and I can't remember who else. The thing with that big band is that's really the way you do a big band, which was like, you know, 12 trumpets, 12 trombones, like 8 saxes, you know. It was enormous, and that's how you get that really slippery sound, you know.
So bigger than a traditional big. I mean, I guess
it was huge. It was huge.
Yeah,
maybe I was seeing double.
But I mean, I mean, so
is it ever too big? Is it ever too big?
It's too big if you're paying the bill.
Well, did you ever check out Stockhausen's Gruppen for 3 orchestras?
No, I know that, but I've never seen it live.
Well, no, I haven't seen that either. I mean, that's never made. It costs too much money. But so would you consider yourself well, maybe not even in retrospect, but maybe combine it with a chronological history here. Producer first, composer first. In your mind, what's the sequence? And in your mind, how do you consider yourself? And then, of course, do you a film score? I always found film scores kind of, as you were saying, even it is composer, but it's something more and in between, because you're dealing with a whole other medium as well. So, well, let's go back.
And I mean, soundtracks. Look, I just interject. Soundtracks are so important to everything. They can make or break a film, a cartoon, a commercial. I mean, and people just, yeah, they're just listening to it. Yeah, there it goes.
Well, technically, film score is different than soundtrack. Soundtrack is a curation of songs that someone else finds, and a film score is what you do is just write the music to what's happening at the time. Anyhow,
if you go back to the beginning, did you start like as a producer, as a composer, when, especially, in the origins of your genesis, when you were doing stuff nobody else was doing yet, which was physically cutting tapes together before the wonderful technology of sampling came in and every asshole had a sampler?
Well, I saw myself as an artist who was a music obsessive who wanted to create multiples. So I wanted my records to be art objects and everyone could own an original, but they were like multiples. And that was kind of where I started from. But I also wanted to make the type of music that I wanted to hear. But it took me years to actually make it properly. There was a lot of audacity involved in what I did. And there was a lot of experimenting and going through this long process of getting what was in my head out of my head and onto the tape. And there's a kind of a corrupting process that happens in that path. And I think that corrupting process is kind of what made things much more interesting,
Well, and also because your lyrics are so important, they're so over the top. Other composers who make music that's as elaborate as yours, a lot of time there are no lyrics, but you have a lot of lyrics. And do the lyrics come first sometimes? Does the music come first? How does that work? Or is it always different? It's like, now I got some lyrics and I got to put some music to it.
No, sometimes the lyrics come first and sometimes the music comes first. Sometimes they come at the same time. I mean, sometimes the music invokes or evokes or invokes the lyrics. And sometimes the whole thing comes to me in a dream as well. Or in a semi-somnambulistic state.
Well, one of my favorite songs of yours still, and I have to hear it every few months, is Viva. I can do any goddamn thing I want, because it is our theme song. That means everybody who's listening to this should play it at least once a month.
Yeah,
I think it's a very complete version of what Foetus was, because it's so elaborate, it's so good, it's an anthem.
Yeah, it is. It was meant as an anthem. It was also kind of prophetic because I since discovered that I can't do every goddamn thing I want. But it's a good, it was a encapsulation of what I wanted to do up at that point.
I think it's interesting you talk about the corruption, the process corrupting you, and there is a kind of fake it till you make it, and in that process you are going to have these filters, tools that you're just grasping for, just to attempt to realize what you're going for. I mean, I know Beethoven, he was like a purist, and he would be like, I don't even compose on an instrument. I don't want any filter. I want to go directly from brain to paper, where Stravinsky used pianos and used all these different things. Of course, careful what you wish for Beethoven, because eventually the ultimate filter, his ears, he went deaf, and he had absolutely no corruption. It was really what was in his head.
Would it be better to be deaf or to have a constant ringing in one or both sides of your head? I'm not sure. Or will it eventually lead to deafness? Not sure.
I don't know. Well, I'm just talking about the corruption of your process and how you surrendered to it in order to actually just still make it go. A lot of people, once they have a corruption of the process, they see it as an obstacle, and it discourages them. Where
there are other corruptions to the process.
Sure.
Which the initial corruption to my process was the fact that my inexperience, and I didn't know what I was doing, or my lack of expertise on any instrument, and but I worked to figure out systems to overcome that and so on. And now I'm at the point where I can realize a lot of things, really that were in my head, and realize them as I hear them in my head. Not always, but but sometimes. But there's other corruptions to the process which are like, you know, you're in a critic, which is maybe paralyzing you before you actually put pen to paper, or you know, feelings of like the imposter syndrome, or, you know, things like that, which can also be, you know, a corruption, or you know, or just you know, things like authenticity, you know. And I think that that's really an interesting, you know, conundrum as well, you know. I mean,
if you're
looking at what you're trying to do, because I'm not trying to do the same thing every time I do something, you know. I'm trying to do different things every time. And I'm sure,
I think you have actually fully succeeded in being more musically schizophrenic than just about anybody I can think of in this lifetime or another. As far as the inner critic, I mean, I not having one, of course, it always saddens me when somebody else does. I think I once told you, just put all your CDs on the floor and look what you fucking done. Can't you appreciate yourself? Because, and a lot of musicians cannot appreciate themselves at some point. And that brings me to what you were saying before about you were kind of too embarrassed when Dinosaur Jr. was at Poisson Rouge and played with Ron Ashton, and you were like, I don't know if I could do it. But then if we look at some of your early performances, especially with Foetus, alone on a stage with pig heads, clothes dripping off you, rubbing yourself, an over-sexualized shadow version of who you truly are, which is basically sweet and retiring. How did you have the fucking nerve, kid?
Well, I mean, you know, to invoke this Naomi Klein book again that I'm reading, Doppelganger. I think that there are different sides of ourselves, and we have different, you know, aspects to ourselves. And, you know, that I think that a performance aspect of someone, you know, is not necessarily the same person who's going to the deli, you know.
Exactly.
And in the same way that you know, I always think that the best singers are the people that whose singing voice doesn't sound anything like their talking voice, you know. It's a whole different thing. And when I talk about like the inner critic, for example, the inner critic is like is saying, is this good? Is this as good as it can be? Is this great? You know, it should be great. And I need to, you know, start this again, or I need to cut this out, or I don't think there's anything wrong with the inner critic.
Well, and the thing is, you're the only one that can criticize accurately what you do, because who the fuck cares about what anybody else says, especially when you have such an incredible body of work. Fuck the motherfuck off, fuckers.
Well, you know, I don't, you know, I sort of try and get, I mean, I don't send my stuff around for comments necessarily.
No,
but
I know.
But isn't there also a relative there's like a ratio of how critical you can be when you have things like deadlines. So for instance, you know, time and reflection, if you're making your own art, you know, that can be a great tool. Let sit on it, go back and reflect on it. Where if a TV network or a production house is cracking the whip, sometimes there's just no time to even have an inner critic, right? I mean,
but yeah, I do think that that there is a good value to, you know, putting things out there that are more I don't want to say half baked, but, you know, that are maybe not fully baked. But then when you look at improvisation, for example, I mean, like, there's a lot to be said for the, you know, the creation in the moment, and the fact that you're putting something out there that that you're committing to in real time, you know. Not that I ever improvise, but you know, those sort of snapshots, that's a whole different form of composition, you know, spontaneous composition.
But in a weird way, you kind of
wait a second. To quell, or you know, to contradict the inner critic, have you ever felt, oh yeah, I like, oh wow, that person like complimented by somebody out of whatever left field that's like J.G. Thirlwell? master composer? Like, has there ever been a compliment that affected you? I mean, certainly that nobody can compliment me like I compliment myself, so I don't fucking care. I'm just curious about you. Have you ever thought, wow, that's great?
I don't remember sort of, well, I mean, there's been certain pieces of affirmation, and I think that we all kind of need affirmation. And you get affirmation from an audience, or you get affirmation from your peers or whatever. But I spend a lot of time alone, and as my composition is solitary, and so sometimes I'll drink a drop of affirmation, like sort of someone who's been lost in the desert for 90 days. But there's not a lot, there hasn't been a lot of affirmation from certainly some of the TV work.
I think my biggest compliment, the only compliment I've ever accepted that didn't come out of my own mouth, was when Dennis Dunaway of Alice Cooper just said, "Oh, Lydia, by first name, covered Black Juju." I'm like, what? I think that was the only compliment I ever said. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Well, I mean, if larger ensembles are commissioning you to compose for them, man, that's a great affirmation.
And if two long-running TV series commissioned you to keep going, have they both ended now? Has Venture Brothers, well, the movie's coming out, or is it out?
Ended. The movie's out, yeah, and the final, the season finale of the series finale of Archer is next weekend.
Fabulous.
Is there a rap party that you're going to?
There is, but it's in Atlanta, so I'm not going.
Okay.
Maybe I'll send a small person to pop out of a mini cupcake for you in celebration.
Very, very silly, which I appreciate. So what was your first film score gig?
I mean, I think, it's possibly the Kern stuff, the Death Trip stuff in the 80s.
Richard Kern, Death Trip?
Yeah, Richard Kern. I mean, that first stuff was taking existing material and putting it to film, which I think was like, what was that stuff? Oh, it was like the what were those early films called, Lydia?
Fingered, Right Side of My Brain, Submit to Me, Submit to Me Now. Manhattan Loves Suicides. You killed
Manhattan
me first.
It was Manhattan Loves Suicides.
Thought we'd get there eventually.
Yeah, I think it was that. And then later on, the first time I really scored to picture was Kern's Evil Cameraman. And that was where, instead of just taking existing instrumentals and editing them together and having a lot of stuff and figuring out what works best with which scene, those were composed with the intention of being the accompaniment to those films. And then around the same time there was a couple of other films around the same time where I tried my hand at scoring to picture. Yeah, those were the main ones. And since Venture Brothers started, Venture Brothers I got as a result of having created my project Steroid Maximus, and Steroid Maximus was very much sort of inspired by soundtracks. So when I was creating it, I said it, I called it the soundtrack for a film that's yet to be made, which has since become kind of a cliche, but it hadn't been.
Well, also, but the Steroid Maximus stuff, I mean, was very groovy as well. I mean, it was very that's the only word I can think of, is very groovy.
Some of it was groovy, and some of it was dark and abstract. So it was kind of all over the place. But that was the universe that Chris McCulloch, who created the show, imagined to be the Ventureverse. And that's how I got into scoring, really, because I was creating music that sounded like film scores.
What are some of your favorite film scores or soundtrack records? I mean, I know you've got thousands of records, but name a few that sometimes you just have to go back to.
I'd say my favorite, well, the classic composers that I love are, the ones that, the real pillars of soundtrack composing, which are like Bernard Herrmann, Ennio Morricone, Jerry Goldsmith, and then there's a lot of contemporary ones that I like, Danny Elfman and Marco Beltrami. And I like, a lot of the, then there's a new generation of people who are kind of coming from experimental music and electronic music, like Mika Levy and probably Critic and Colin Stetson even, has made some amazing scores. And so, it's a really rich
Stepping sideways from music for a minute, you had mentioned something to me the other day, which I always encourage everyone because I think it's important. And I know you have a very wide collection of rock bios. No, I don't. You said you might be starting on, I don't know if it's a memoir, a bio about yourself.
Yeah. What's the question?
Would it be if you do it, is it a tell-all, or are you going to kind of you're going to kind of censor some stuff? Tell some. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll have to there'll have to be it'll be a tell-all with, and then there'll have to be a secret code to the lockbox that can be dug up in 100 years time after
like a meet and greet price, so you can get and meet spelled MEAT. And I would. So what about rock and roll memoirs? What are some of your top favorite ones that you've read and you think are quite entertaining?
Memoirs. Well, I started digging into memoirs because I was interested in doing, but the one that was that sparked off the whole thing, and I'd been thinking about doing a memoir for a while, but the thing that sparked it off and made me excited about the idea was actually, it's not really by a musician, but it was by Tony Fletcher, who had the fanzine Jamming in the 70s. And I used to work for Virgin Records in London, in Oxford Walk, which was a sort of a shopping mall in the basement of in Oxford Street. And he used to bring his fanzine down there, and we used to chat. And he was a few years younger than me. So he did this memoir from around his childhood called Boy About Town. And it's his life from about 14 to about 18 or something, where he's making the fanzine and just being a kid and going to school and running around and going to see the Jam and stuff like that. And it was so intimate, and he took like these moments that seemed kind of insignificant and expanded them, and they were really universally identifiable.
What's that book called? Is it called?
Boy About
Town.
Yeah.
So are you going to go back are you going to go back into the womb and those stories of what might have existed before fetus was really a fetus?
Way before the womb. I'm going way back to the 1500s, baby.
Nice.
Whoa.
Perfect. I thought so.
I'm going Middle Ages.
Actually,
terrifying.
I just got a book in the mail of the day called The Mysterious Stranger by Mark Twain, which is about the 1590s and three brothers who are just taking down Christianity. So maybe you need to put that in your bookshelf and see if that might inspire.
Yeah, well, I've gotten into my genealogy back until about the 1600s.
Nice.
But anyway, Tony's book really excited me in that way because of taking this minutia and these identifiable things, the kind of cringy things, and sharing them. And so that sent me on a path of like binging on
binging on cringe.
You can't help but binge on cringe.
Of course.
But some of the ones that really stood out to me were, I do love the sordid drug-a-log. So, but the most harrowing one is Mark Lanigan's book, which is incredible.
Papa John by John Phillips is incredible.
Papa John is like one of the most extreme drug-a-logs I've ever.
I Am Ozzy is very entertaining. I am
Oh,
I am
yeah.
Ozzy. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's
I
very
read
funny.
there's two David Crosby books. I read both of
Whoa.
those. Those
Which
are
one are they? Okay.
He's so repulsive. Do you even have to read the book to realize how grotesque he
Oh
is?
God.
those are intense. And Wayne Kramer's book is really good
Oh, I'm sure.
on that front as well.
Well, Wayne Kramer for a minute. Didn't you, as well as myself, Eugene Robinson, and a variety of other people, were all on that recently released MC5 tribute? The musicians being our booking agent, Joey Killingsworth.
you forgot to mention Alice Cooper is on there too.
I haven't heard the whole thing yet, but who else is on it? Yes.
Well, who else do you need to know about?
There you go.
Nobody. I don't. It doesn't matter. Just look it up. It's out now.
Also Zal Clemenson from the sensational Alex Harvey band is playing guitar on one track too. So I mean, like, it's impeccable pedigree. Yeah. So anyway, yeah. And then I recently finished Thurston's memoir.
I haven't read that yet.
Yeah.
Can you throw one of the memoirs under the bus? Like, that's boring. What the hell? Was there anyone that you read that was very kind of like, this is not that exciting?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say, I don't judge them for excitement because,
Sure.
You write about unexciting things and make them compelling. But I thought Chris France's book was really not well written.
Okay.
I myself like the Rick Springfield book because to see that cutie admit he was a sex addict but was still with the same woman for all these years, I had to give him a bit of credit there. And also the fact that he, after writing hit singles, he was reduced to playing in a bar band in Glendale when he had a dip popularity. I don't even like his music. I just like the story.
That's a deep cut. Rick Springfield.
Very well. Colin Marson loaned me Fieldy from Korn's memoir. That's pretty rough. And you can get through it in about 2 hours. But
it seems like everyone from Korn's written a memoir. And half of them are born again Christians.
Yeah, they went from Bakersfield meth heads to born again Christians. I mean,
well, that's where I have to draw the line. I don't want to read about Christians dead or alive, born again or not. The only good Christian is a dead Christian, which is a Thirlwell song from way back. All I know. Anyway, we're going to wrap this up.
One last question. I mean,
always has a last question.
I'm
curious. Tie it up.
Well, you listed your favorite film score composers. Do you ever listen to them in isolation without the film? I mean, those are written. Okay. Well, I mean, they're written to accompany this film, so in isolation is a different experience for sure.
Yeah. That's really has been always a really big influence on the way that I write music, because when you listen to a film score in isolation, there are musical events that happen that don't bear to make any sense musically.
Right, exactly.
But they make sense with the visuals, but that's what's exciting to me about a piece of music where something unexpected happens. And then that sort of has given me permission to compose like that, where you'll make a left turn for no particular reason other than to make a left turn. And that's always been really inspiring to me.
Okay. All right. And would you say you listen to, what about the masters from the past who didn't do film score? I mean, do you listen to those composers equally, or you tend to mostly listen to film score?
I'm not that interested in the canon, I mean, I have listened to that stuff, but for me, the masters would start, with Debussy, and
okay. Impressionism on.
The first true master for me is like Stravinsky.
Okay.
And on from there, but I mean, I appreciate the canon.
And it's funny you say that, because a lot of Stravinsky's compositions were meant to accompany ballet, tons of them. So I mean, people listen to Stravinsky pieces in isolation all the time, but they're meant to accompany a ballet. So
when you're not making music, do you listen to music a lot, JG?
Yeah, I didn't used to, but no, I do. I mean, my consumption of music and culture in general, I equate to a whale devouring plankton. I just like
open wide for Chunky.
I take in huge amounts of it and absorb it and it goes into my DNA and it nourishes me, and I need to be nourished at all times. And I like to see what other people are doing.
Yes.
I don't really create in isolation at all. I think I used to try to do that, but now I just like, I suck in everything, and I have like an unquenchable thirst for everything, and I'm checking out stuff all the time.
Well, I always see you out. I mean, you're out there and taking advantage of the city regularly.
Yeah.
You check out what's going on.
You pay a surcharge to live in New York, and if you're not taking advantage of the culture, then you're wasting your surcharge.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much. A wonderful time talking to you. My favorite living composer, even dead ones don't match. J.G. Thirlwell, master composer, producer, graphic artist, incredible artwork, and just an all-around general cool dude. This is the Lydian Spin. Lydia Lunch, Tim Dunk. Thank you, J.G. Thirlwell.
Thanks
a lot.
Okay, guys.
Yep.